3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 7th ASDB Board meeting. We'll go ahead and start by call to order. Roll call.
Lynn Davison. Can you hear me? Testing. That's why you have two. Lynn Davison is absent. Mike Manley.
Here.
Linda Bove.
Present.
Mike Gordon.
I'm here.
Shelley Herbold. Dean Howard.
Present.
Sue K. Kneifel present. David Nigro.
Present.
Mark Sims.
Okay, roll call complete. Item 1.02, Parents' Perspective on ASL Immersion Camp. Superintendent Reichman.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon, President Howard and members of the board. We have a real brief presentation and video from our Deaf Mentor Coordinator. Her name is Chrissy Boyer. She will be coming up and give you some information about the recent ASL immersion camp that we provided to parents of deaf students. We'll go ahead with Chrissy Boyer.
Well, hello, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to board members, Superintendent Reichman, and Assistant Superintendent Rex, and the members of our community. My name is Christina Boyer Davis, and I am the coordinator for the Deaf Mentor Program. The program provides services to families who have deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind children from birth to age 5. This year, the Deaf Mentor Program was awarded a grant from Arizona Community Foundation. And that grant was to provide an American Sign Language Immersion Day Camp. And we provided that in 2 different locations. That was in Tucson and in Phoenix. The goal of those funds were to provide 20 families participation in this day camp. And in reality, we provided it to 27 families total for both locations. That ASL Immersion Day Camp was very family friendly. We focused on ASL development, language use, and practice. Those families were able to take that home and use that in their daily life. It was very inclusive for them. We included all of the family members. At the end of the event, we asked some families to share their experience and their thoughts related to that ASL Immersion Camp and the Deaf Mentor Program. ASDB's awesome media team was there to be able to record their statements. So let's go ahead and watch that video of that ASL Immersion Day Camp.
The ASDB logo is superimposed against an aerial view of the Tucson campus. Words appear. What did you like about ASL Immersion Camp?
The thing I like about it is that it's teaching me how to communicate with my son.
A class of seated adults sign in unison with the teacher standing in front of the board.
This class, I know that I'm gonna be able to communicate with him so that we can understand each other clearly, you know. When I was in grade school, I did learn sign language, but after the times I grew out of grade school, then I kind of lost it. It's hard because if I had continued my sign language back then, it would have been easier for me to communicate with my son. But other than that, this program is doing pretty good, to my understanding, that because we are communicating and he's learning a few words through sign language, and it's awesome to see him communicate back to you.
The teacher signs to the class as they respond to her in sign language. The teacher seated on the ground signs to a little boy sitting inside a tent. Words appear. What do you hope to see in the future for your deaf/hard of hearing child?
My hope for the future, that all kids have language. It's important for me because when we first started, our daughter had no language, no access to language. And if it wasn't for Chrissy and her, staff, we would not be here today.
A line of parents seated at a table smile as they face the front of the room. One of the parents interacts with the two teachers at the front of the classroom. Sitting at a table covered with Halloween-themed artwork, 3 children work on their pictures while a woman communicates with them in sign. A woman in the background pulls a wagon. From the back of the classroom, one of the parents fingerspells to the teacher at the front of the classroom. Words appear. What was your favorite part of the day?
What I love about the program is that not only us are learning, but the kids and the other extended family will also be able to communicate to Dawn, and that's what I appreciate about the program.
One little girl excitedly hugs the woman next to her. Seated at tables, children decorate pumpkins with cutouts and markers. One parent laughs while she interacts with the 2 teachers at the front of the classroom. People stand and socialize as they communicate in sign language. Words appear. What about the program interests or benefited you?
Well, the Deaf Mentor program has already been a huge part of my family for quite a few years now.
5 or 6 years?
Yeah, a long time. But I feel like it's kind of encouraged my path with my kids, how I interact with my kids, things that I know about my kids. Actually, I think most of my experience has been through Deaf Mentor and meeting a lot of different deaf adults and a lot of different families, and it's kind of encouraged even my career path now.
Only thing I really have to say is I wish it would have been there earlier for us. It would have changed a lot of things we did early on, but after having it, it really did help a lot and guided us when it came to our children and exposed us to a new culture.
A man waves and signs to a baby held in his mother's arms. A little girl reaches out and touches the camera lens with her finger. The ASDB logo appears with words underneath it.
Okay, does anyone have any questions related to the ASL Immersion Day Camp or the Deaf Mentor program?
Any questions?
And Linda Bove is saying it's wonderful. It was completely awesome. I really hope to see this continue. Hope to see it to continue to grow. And Chrissy is saying, thank you so much. Thanks for this opportunity to spotlight this amazing experience. Have a wonderful evening.
This is Dean. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Item number 1.03, call to the public on agendized items. I don't think I have any items. The only 2 I have are for non-agenda towards the end. Okay, just making sure. Item 1.04, executive team reports. Superintendent Reichman.
You have the executive team reports in writing, so if you have any questions about what you read, is now your time, your opportunity.
Any questions on the items? Hearing none, we'll go to item 1.05, Assistant Superintendent Report.
Good afternoon, President Howard and board members. The information has been submitted for my report, but in addition to, I would like to make 2 announcements. ASDB Tucson campus had their continuous school improvement site visit October 7th. This is an opportunity for the Arizona Department of Education to come and do classroom observations, focus groups, and review the continuous school improvement plan, and then help with next steps. The ADE rep interviewed stakeholders, admins, teachers, students to discuss the current plan, and they gave some feedback of successes and challenges, school improvement goals, and some academic data was used to give us kind of a snapshot of how we are doing. Some of our pluses, successes include the plus days, because that is an opportunity for teachers to collaborate and participate in trainings to help review student data and plan. Also, the campus has implemented the Leader in Me, which is involving all staff and students with behavior and support for leadership. Also, our new math curriculum has been successfully rolled out and positively impacted our instructional expectations and is starting to establish a growth mindset for our staff and our students. Our professional development now is very purposeful. Our JTED opportunities for students continue to increase. We've had a lot of success on that campus. Our students have competed in national and won national competitions. The challenges include we need to continue to find ways to support our interventions for all students, finding a system to help close those gaps on academics, and finding more evidence-based curriculum and accessibility for our students. The classroom observations showed that there was much active engagement with students, not just sitting and getting information, rather conducting actual interactions with the teachers. Objectives were posted on the board. They were there to do business of learning. During the teacher interviews, much positives, but then also some of their challenges were expressed. Of course, I've yet to be in a school district where they talked about the lack of parental involvement being an issue, but they do appreciate the plus days and the opportunities it affords them to take data and break down student learning and then go back and reteach. They feel the administrative support is very strong. They feel overall they are more unified as a school and a campus. Student interviews gleaned that students feel very safe and supported. They are experiencing more academic challenges, and some like it and some not as much. But some of the offshoots of that were, care to elaborate? Well, we want to learn a foreign language. Okay, that's an opportunity. And some of our classes have both our deaf and hard of hearing as well as our blind and visually impaired students in the same classroom because of the highly qualified academic needs for math, for example. And we now have blind students wanting to learn ASL, and our students that are on the other side wanting to know more about Braille. So it's really kind of opened up some conversations with kids. And kids are kids. You put them in the same room and they're going to start connecting, and they're trying to find ways. They absolutely love the Sentinel Zone. The Sentinel Zone is their happy place. The homework and the opportunities and the staff that is making those opportunities is greatly appreciated as far as the students' perspective. Next steps from ADE included developing a multi-tiered system to support all students for student learning, which we are aware that we need to continue to grow. We need to provide opportunities for teachers to visit classrooms in other school districts, other classrooms, to see how they do business and how they're teaching and how they're growing. To continue to explore those evidence-based curriculum opportunities. And also the campus is going to focus on the roles and responsibilities to try to see if we can be more efficient and more effective with our staffing and needs that are on that campus. PDSD had their site visit on the 30th of October, and I will share that information with you in January. We have not received that. Now for the cooperatives. Our cooperatives have been researching and looking into redesigning the cooperatives in a hope to be more efficient and more effective. We've met with directors, some supervising teachers, and Annette Reichman, and they've had opportunities to discuss the current realities that exist in our co-ops Things we are considering are our cooperative and agency realities. We have some very strong realities that are coming up. We have upcoming retirements of 2 directors. So now is the time to look at redesign. We are having retirements of teachers and other staff members. I asked HR to give me a list. Hey, and you have it in your board docs. What's the percentage of teachers that can retire early, normal, right now? And can you give me that information? And what I found out was early retirement is when they turn 50, but they quite haven't got all the points in the Arizona retirement system. And normal retirement means they've met the retirement points and they can leave whenever they want. With regard to teachers, there are 32% of our teachers that can retire. And when you look at it, you're like, oh, 32%. So I asked for more information, and this is where I kind of was like, wow. That 32% is 109. Other certified staff, members, OT, PT, audiologists, people in those type of support areas, it's about 34%, which is about 16 staff members of the agency. And then staff overall, the ancillary other groups, that's about 33 to 34%. So a total of 227 people can retire. Now, soon, that is our current reality. With that information, we are not getting 50, 60 applications for teaching positions. We're not getting 5 applications for teaching positions sometimes. And I'm going to pause because it gives me pause every time I look at those numbers, and I've rolled them over multiple times. We are looking at redesigning our cooperatives. We are focused on sustainability, and the timing is now. The directors have reviewed and researched options, scenarios. There have been thorough discussions about the best way to support each other, to provide effectiveness and consistency for student learning, to remove redundancies in each of the co-ops, and to be most efficient with our resources. We have developed some why statements for the redesign. It's not because we necessarily want to. We're in a position where we need to. It's been talked about, people talk about it, but now this is our current reality, and here's our why. We need quality assurances for the delivery of instruction for our teachers statewide. Those quality assurances let us know that what we're doing is the same for all. We have an opportunity to take something that was established 35 years ago and to innovate and make it better, to help students access their learning in spite of the teacher shortage. We looked at some demographics on the growth in Arizona, and we see that that corridor from Maricopa County through Pinal County down into Pima County is going to bust and boom. And I'm sure the 2020 census will give us more information, while the other outlying areas tend to recede and get smaller with our students. We have an opportunity as an itinerant program to clearly define in this redesign who we are, what we do, and how we do it with consistency and fidelity, and the timing is now. Changes are coming with retirements, so this redesign will help us manage this change. From our current realities and whys, we have established a vision for this project. Our vision is a statewide program providing itinerant services, promoting quality assurances, ensuring all students have access to learning in their schools and districts using statewide resources to guarantee consistent delivery of research-based strategies and highly qualified staff. We are looking to bring phase 1. This is a huge task, and also in your board docs there's a picture where in life you have your plan, and your plan's really simple because when it's in your head, it's a pretty straight line. You're on that bike, you're moving toward the goal. We started our plan on our bike and we hit some boulders, and then we got out of the boulders and then we went into the forest and we were attacked by some really nagging issues. And then once we got through some of those nagging issues, we got into a bit of a snowstorm on a gondola, and we are currently on a rock face facing a tiger. And at this point in time, with the information we have, we hope to bring you a phase 1 of what we want to do. And it is no easy task. And I tell you what, there's been some heads knocked together and some gnashing of teeth, but you have the right people on the seat to move forward. And the redesign of phase 1, we hope to bring you in January to give you information. It's a large, complex piece of our agency, and every time we think we're moving in a direction, there's that but what about factor. And we can stand and wring our hands, but what about this? Or we can keep pushing forward. And it's not a perfect first draft by any stretch. We have a starting point, and we need your help as a board now. So now I turn it to you. As you move forward with your strategic planning, and you understand that there are some massive initiatives that are going on in this agency, not just in the co-ops. Your Birth to 5 is it's at a beginning and a middle, and it's moving. Our schools are in their 3rd year of the continuous improvement. There are some major things happening. If you need clarification, if you need to know the whys of some of the things that are happening, please reach out and tap into these highly qualified resources and these staff members who I have had the opportunity to watch remote lessons that are being done and seeing active teaching and good quality teaching. And I've also got to jump in a car and drive around to almost to the border. I think I was in Douglas last time, watching teachers in the classroom with kids. There are some fantastic things happening in our state, but we want to be consistent and we want to be better. So please ask. You have tons of people that are willing to support you on this strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you. I will add something to that. From the perspective of the numbers that you're showing on the eligible retirement, it scares me. And I think it should scare all of us into the sense that out of that strategic plan, some of us attended, I think a good chunk of the board was there. Mm-hmm. This is one of the topics that I really had my ear on. And mm-hmm. when I was preaching to the choir and saying, we got to rethink this. We got to tear it down, get crazy, get very, very specific into some crazy ideas. And I hope that's what you're going to bring back to this board, because I think we're ready for that.
It's going to get crazy. Yes. Thank you.
So I'm all for that. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, thank you very much. Item 1.06, Superintendent's Report.
Good afternoon, President Howard, members of the board, Assistant Superintendent Rex, and the ASDB community. I'm really happy to see you here today. We have a lot of work to do this afternoon, so I'm going to keep my report to the board very brief, because Assistant Superintendent Rex has already said a lot of what I wanted to say. Very similar thoughts here. But I'm going to add a few thoughts, a few more. Okay. If you recall at the last board meeting, I talked about first order change. That first order change is you keep the systems intact, but you just make small, incremental, continuous improvement changes. And then you have second order change, which is really changing the system. As you've heard from Assistant Superintendent Rex, we are right now beginning to move into the second order change. And we're not only doing it in one area, we're doing it across the agency. As she mentioned, the early learning program, we are now at the beginning stages of integrating the 0 to 3 with the 3 to 5 programming. Kendra Benedict, the director of the program, just worked with the supervising teachers to redistribute caseload. so that we can provide better services to all families in the state and at the same time have teachers for our preschools. Our preschools are expanding. We're running out of teachers, so that's a challenge in the preschools. We have, as you heard, our schools. We are in school improvement, third year of doing that. We're making a lot of changes, and it will continue this year, next year, and the following year. And then, as you just heard from Assistant Superintendent Rex, the cooperative. In 2 years, it's going to look very different than it looks like now. I will add there may be a fourth area. We, the board, will soon go into executive session. And in the executive session, we're going to talk about conversations we've been having with Arizona Department of Education about the roles and responsibilities of ASCD, ADE, and the school districts for students who are enrolled in our site-based schools. We will have that conversation in closed session, but it may have a major impact on our programs. So, as Assistant Superintendent Rex said, now's the time for all of us to be engaged in strategic planning. I'm really looking forward and excited that we're going to have the opportunity this afternoon to talk about how the board and the agency leadership can come together and begin to collaborate on the strategic planning. I am a little concerned that with all of the changes that are happening, it will start going into different directions. And the way for us to make sure we're moving together in the same direction is to have a very clear sense of purpose, shared purpose, and to have very clear strategic planning and initiatives. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation with you this afternoon and going into the future. And that's all I have at this moment in time. You will be hearing from me multiple times this afternoon. Any questions for me?
Any comments or questions? Thank you.
My one comment is you only innovate if you're not afraid of failing. So fear of failure is what prevents innovation most times.
Still afraid.
I understand.
I confess.
I got you.
All right, moving on to item 2.01, consent agenda items. These are items 3.01, 6.01, 6.02, 7.03, 7.05, and 7.06. Do I hear a motion to approve consent agenda items?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda items as listed.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Now on to item 3.01. I'm sorry, 3.02. Adoption of Braille curriculum.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Yancarelli, and I'm the Director of Blind Programs. I provided a summary of the Braille Curriculum Committee meeting that happened on October 3rd with a table. I'm ready to take any questions you may have on that. This is an action item.
Do we have any questions on the item? David?
If there are no questions, Lisa, thank you for your work on this. I know this is a document was created through collaboration with the staff to assess these various curricula. Our process for implementation is still moving forward, but at this time, I would like to move that we approve all of these Braille curricula for use in the schools. our later process early next year will involve the selection of one or more for purchasing consideration if needed. But the idea here is that we will formally approve and adopt all of these for use in the schools. So before I formally make that motion, does anyone have any questions about that procedural aspect?
Any questions?
Okay, and one other thing that I should note is this is for literary braille only.
Correct.
We're considering math a bit separately because of the UEB math and the NMFUD math, which is a different coding. So I move that we adopt all of the curricula listed in this agenda item to be approved for use throughout the agency.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work on this too as well. It's great. Now on to item 3.03, information discussion item. Correct.
So this is where we go into executive session.
Where do we go? So do we
We have to-
Into the room over there.
So, yeah, I move that we go into executive session.
I have a motion to go into E-session. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it. We are now going to go into E-session.
Hold on, I need to read piece of this. Yeah.
Let's have that read, please. My apologies.
Yeah. I did. Okay. Oh, I know. Sorry about that.
It's okay, because it says it's 2 and 3. You can just read this.
Okay, the board may go into executive session pursuant to ARS 38.431.03A and 2 for discussion consideration of confidential documents pursuant to the attorney-client privilege communication, ARS 38-431-03A3, legal advice on the documents and potential agreement, and/or ARS 38-431.03A4, and discussion of a potential agreement between ASDB and ADE.
Thank you.
There's our little ramp.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you have time for the bathroom? Yes. Okay, do you want to
Yeah. There's, yeah, two that we can set. I don't know.
Bless you. Okay, I think we are back in full force. Am I correct? Full force? Ready? Okay, we're back. Still on item 3.03.
So do you want me to just encapsulate things? So from our discussion, we just want to give Net and Dr. Rex the go-ahead to continue to work with the AG's office and with ADE and go forward with some kind of data reporting agreement that is going to reflect accurate and accountable information on the students that we currently serve. And then we would also like further information on the discussion about moving forward regarding FAPE and ASCB's responsibility, and so that we can make an informed decision on how we want to proceed.
Thank you. On to item 4.01, finance report. Excuse me.
Shayna Cooper, Executive Director of Business Services. Good evening, Board President Howard, Superintendent Reichman, Assistant Superintendent Rex, members of the board, and ASDB community. Provided to each of you is a consolidated version of the financial reports that were reported to the Finance Committee for the month end and quarter end September 30, 2019. For comparative purposes, the reports also show data as of September 30, 2018. Our most recent Finance Committee meeting was held on November 1st with Board Members Manley and Gordon and Superintendent Reichman. The minutes of the meetings have been included with today's consent agenda items. In summary, we reviewed and discussed the budgetary and fiscal year budget to actual fiscal data, the grant revenues and expenditure reports, and reviewed student enrollment as of October 1, 2019 in comparison to October 2018. Before I go on to the financial reports, I would think that the rest of the Finance Committee members would agree that during our meeting last week, it was evident that the leadership team have taken great strides in providing the fiscal data. We have been able to make more data-driven decisions, and I do not deny it's a lot of information to share in a 2 to 2.5 hour meeting, but it does align with the agency's 3 operating principles, which are the accountability, the collaboration, and the transparency. So continuing on to the actual report as referenced on page 1, as of October 1st, 2019, there were about 516 full-time equivalents and 105 vacant positions. The vacancies include various positions, and of those 28 various other positions that have been notated in the report, I do want to mention that 2 of those positions are within business services. We do have a budget analyst and a grants administrator position that I am actively recruiting for. We have been short-staffed over the last couple of months due to retirements and resignations. And as part of the staffing, as well as the unit restructure currently going on, I will begin actively recruiting for an assistant controller within the next few days as well. So when those 3 positions are filled, business services will be fully staffed. Beginning on page 3, you'll see the financial summary comparing current year to prior year data, showing the revenues and expenditures. Pages 5 through 8 will show you the fiscal data in various formats, as well as the visuals for more specifically by fund source and by program. And page 9 shows you the budget status report showing our actual revenues and expenditures in compared to the agency's budget. You will notice that the budget on the report references $57.3 million. However, the other fiscal reports on the preceding pages references $55.3 million. The $55.3 million appropriations budget is approved by the legislature. The $57.3 million is our revised internal budget based on more up-to-date estimates related to our non-appropriated funding sources, such as our federal grants, vouchers, and fee-for-service revenues as well. I do want to remind everyone that the appropriations budget is submitted to OSPB a year beforehand, and for transparency purposes, business services did not have sufficient methodologies to forecast and determine ongoing fiscal needs. We actually just began addressing that over the last year. As previously indicated in prior board meetings and work study sessions, the budget team has changed their process in the development and recent submission of our annual budget package to OSPB. And as a whole, the business services staff continue to collaborate with internal departments agency-wide, as well as our external state agencies and other stakeholders to aid in our continuous process improvements. I do try to tell everyone that nothing happens overnight. It is a continuous work in progress, and it's very important, and I think we've discussed it several times already this evening. It's very important that our agency strategic plan is developed. It will only help continue business services in supporting the efforts to implement our operational efficiencies as well as our ongoing cost savings initiatives. One last point I did want to mention, as illustrated on page 9 of the budget status report, you will notate a $4 million deficit as of September 30, 2019. And that's attributed to the actual revenues received, to also include our general fund appropriations totaling $9 million. However, that's offset by our expenditures totaling $13 million. Just as a reminder, and it's no particular concern as of this point, our fiscal year and budget year begins in July. Our school year starts in August, but we don't actually start receiving our voucher revenues until the latter part of September. So what that means is we've had to use $4 million of our cash balance over the last several months. That actually concludes the information that I have provided. If there's no further questions, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
This is Mike Manley. Just again, thank you to Annette for finding you and bringing you on board.
My thunder.
Mike Gordon and we had discussed that we don't have an accountant. I know that you're trying to fill a spot. I don't know if that's something that, as an agency, you guys want to look at bringing on board to the fiscal team. If that would be helpful to you, anything to help you do what you've already done. Would take very little coercion for the board to agree to. But again, very short couple of years ago, where does that $55 million go? Well, we know down to the detail where it goes now. And thank you very much. And thank you, Annette, for having the foresight to put somebody in place to really open up a transparent view of the fiscal side of ASDB. So thank you very much, and you couldn't have been more clear, and you answer questions for a special ed teacher who probably had lots of silly questions at the beginning, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Additional questions? I was going to say almost the exact same thing, because you're right. A couple of years ago, it was very confusing. We didn't know where anything was, and it was a troublesome issue. Now with the committee, and special thanks to you and the committee on making this go the direction it is. So you read through these and it makes sense. And now you're able to really start to dig a little more deeper into the budget as we move forward.
Yes.
I think Annette and I have had conversations about maybe even a budget work session, but this kind of data makes it a lot easier if we get to that position. So thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5.01, approval of superintendent's evaluation.
Yes, I want to thank you for taking the time to sit down and read through and do the superintendent's evaluation. I know it takes time, it takes thought, and you did that. So I really appreciate you doing that. Because we've already had a pretty long meeting, I'm not going to go into detail about the evaluation. You already have, I think, a 2-page summary that just summarizes the evaluation results. What I will do is talk a little bit about going forward based on the information that you provided. You have given me an overall rating of somewhere between good to excellence. Mostly good, some excellence, a few. So what I need to be focusing on going into the future is to continue focusing on improving communication as a superintendent. I hear that kind of feedback internal with the agency. We just set up a communication team, and we've been meeting, trying to figure out how we can improve communication both internally and externally. We've just started having that conversation. Another important piece is in January, we may have 1, maybe 2 new board members. That might be a good time to reconvene the entire board and have some training on board role and responsibilities. But definitely for the new members I will need to provide some orientation and training about the agency, open meeting law, and so forth. Another piece that you've heard earlier this evening is the national shortage of teachers, especially teachers of special education and teachers of the visually impaired and teachers of the deaf. That right now has been bumped up to the top. We really need to focus as an agency. We are just now developing a recruitment plan. I just looked at that earlier today, and we're having a larger leadership team meeting to talk about what do we need to do to immediately improve our recruitment effort, and then over the long term, how do we build an infrastructure that supports ongoing, active, not just recruitment, but attraction of new staff to the agency. And I think that's most of it right there.
Any questions or comments? Well, I agree, but before we do that, I got to make a comment. So, as the board president and taking on a different responsibility from the board member side, seeing your regular duties and understanding the dynamic of what you do on a regular basis, very much appreciative of what you do. We often forget that as we're moving forward, that it's a constant. We got to do better. But as we look back where we were and where we are now, your leadership is, from just my perspective, is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
So with that, unless there's other comments, can someone entertain a motion?
My only other comment would be, when I leave this board, I am still thankful that I was part of the board that brought you on. I move that we accept the superintendent's evaluation.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. I hope somebody caught who that was. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item 7.01, discussion action items, strategic plan facilitator selection.
You get to hear from me again. I prepared 4 brief speeches for this afternoon. So let's talk about the strategic planning. We provided you with some materials. I hope you took some time to read them in board docs. The first page was really sort of a summary or outline of what could be included in the scope of work. For example, we can do a board role and responsibility orientation so that we have a reminder of what the board is responsible to do. Then we can revisit the vision and mission statements. I'm guessing at this point in time, maybe we want to revise those. And then we can have a discussion about the current reality, our context, what are opportunities for us and challenges that we are facing right now as an agency. Then we can get to our belief statements, our value statements. We have already started that conversation internally in the agency. We'd love to have you, the board, engage collaboratively in that discussion. Then we get to the 5 proposed priorities that we've been talking about for the last year. Many of you came to the agency steering committee meeting last September 18th. And it was during that steering committee meeting that you participated with agency leadership to identify some potential objectives. And that is provided to you as well, and to look at the possible objectives under each of the 5 priorities. And then, of course, to operationalize the strategic planning, setting up measures, because how do you know that we're doing what we need to be doing? Are we getting to where we want to go? So that's the scope of work. The second document you have is, I think, a 3-page summary of the procurement process. And I'm not going to go into detail with that. If you have questions, we do have a couple of experts here with us that can answer your questions. I will say that with the procurement process, that when you look at that, the dollar amount, anything that's below $5,000, you do not have to have a competitive bid. Anything that's right at $5,000 to $49,999, we, the agency, can publish a request for proposals and get proposals to us that we can review and then select. Anything at $50,000 or above, we have to go through the state procurement office. You have different options in deciding how you want to bring in a facilitator to lead the strategic planning process. One is to do the procurement process. Two is to use the current executive education consultant that we have right now, or maybe a blend of both. And I will leave that up to you.
Questions? I'm waiting.
No, this is David. Superintendent, as we think about this, we all agree that strategic plan is very important in the upcoming year, and we want to do the best job we can on it. We got that kind of draft proposal last time, and we saw some of the dollar amounts that were there. They were a little bit out of context, I think, with the scope of work. If we'd at least be able to see the value of that. Particular vendor more had they restructured it. But from my perspective, to contain costs, if we were to use our current facilitator, and we know what the cost of that is, and it's reasonable, there's potential for you to take on maybe an executive coach or some sort of other professional consultant to help you through the process, but on a limited basis, 10 or 15 hours a month for 6 months, let's say. And that would be, you may, depending on the rate, be able to do that on the lowest level of procurement, so less than $5,000. Maybe it exceeds that if we think of, again, that limited scope of work for 10 or 15 hours for 3 to 6 months. But that would help you, I think, quickly procure that type of help and be in a position to help us start in the strategic plan in January.
This is Dean. From a standpoint of what's the objective, I don't know, is there a thought process that this is assisting Annette in the process or actually assisting the board? Because that's where my head goes, is we've got this dramatic strategic plan that staff and the agencies developing, which is phenomenal back in September. How do we as the board fit all that in? I'm under the argument that says I feel we need someone to help guide us through that process. Annette's time is valuable in an asset standpoint of making sure that's translated with staff and what we're doing, but maybe it is that executive consultant we already have that can help just shepherd us through that process. Does that make sense? I mean, are we saying the same thing? Is my question.
I think so, yeah. I mean, the facilitation, we need the facilitation services. The existing facilitator does it very reasonably, and we don't need to go through the procurement process. But if we do need some outside help to help Annette to prepare for and help Annette guide us through these meetings, because Annette is the one who's going to be implementing the strategic plan, then maybe we could do that, but we can contain costs by making it on a limited engagement type basis, as opposed to a very, very large number of hours and large number of dollars expended.
This makes sense to me.
I agree with what you're saying, David. It makes sense to me. If we start off with what we already have established, so to go from there, I would think that would be the most reasonable decision. And I would appreciate to see Annette, based on her strategic plan, that be followed through and then handed to us as a board, right, to see how that's implemented.
This is Mike. So I agree with Linda. I mean, we need to, Annette needs to be in the driver's seat here with help and take the board along with her. But we need to give her the freedom to steer the ship with our support.
And this is Suke. I would agree with pretty much everything that's said. I think if we start with our current facilitator, and then if there's an identified need that there is an additional assistance, that Annette would need to move things forward with the strategic plan. Because I do think all too often that happens. People go through a strategic planning process, and it's a really nice document that sits upside a shelf somewhere. So I think if at that point we identify the need that she needs some additional executive level assistance or coaching to move that forward, that we could go forward with that at that point.
Kind of hearing a motion. I think I hear a motion, but someone want to clarify that with a motion?
How do we start a motion? What should I say?
Do we-
I move to motion that, I want to make sure I phrase this correctly for the motion. So I motion to have Annette start the process of implementing that strategic plan and implementing a facilitator or a coach for assistance if needed. Anything else I should add to that?
Procedurally, I want to do this right, so you can, and maybe I can help clarify, but I don't want to take
Yes,
over your amendment.
thank you.
I think, are we, what?
I think hers was the actual motion.
Right. But are we asking, and maybe I'm asking for clarification, Linda, are you asking or making the motion to say, use the existing facilitator we have on staff?
Yes.
To move forward, okay.
Yes, correct. Thank you.
I'll leave that one up to you.
I have a motion on the floor. Can I have a second?
This is Suke, I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Discussion?
Go ahead.
Who are we talking about as the staff on, the facilitator on staff?
I believe it's, this is David, I believe it's Nancy Alexander.
Yes.
I'm sorry, who? Say it again?
Nancy Alexander.
Oh, all right, okay, thank you.
If no other discussion, motion on the floor with a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Good job, everyone. That's awesome. Item 7.02, introduction and possible discussion on policies. Maria.
Good evening, Board President Howard, members of the board, Superintendent Reichman, Assistant Superintendent Rex, Maria Murphy, Director of Policy and Government Relations. Before you, you have the red lines of the policy packet. They were presented to the board subcommittee. We had some good discussion around those policies. They were submitted as well to the website for posting for public comment. No public comment was received, and with that, I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none. Item 7.0. Wait, sorry, lost my place. 7.04.
Yes, and this is an action item as well for an urgent adoption of revisions to policy GCD. The urgent adoption would allow the board to approve this policy in one read. It was submitted to the policy subcommittee. The policy subcommittee did not have any concerns. It was also posted to the website for public comment. No public comment received.
Any questions? Hearing none, entertain a motion.
I move, and if I could just make a comment, Maria, as I understand, we need to move to suspend our typical policy regarding adoption of policies, and then we have to move to adopt this one, correct?
That is correct, Mr. Nigro.
All right. So I move that we suspend our policy regarding policy implementation for the purposes of later entertaining a motion to approve this policy.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? The ayes have it.
I move that we adopt the policy as presented on the agenda.
Again, I second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now on to item 7.07, discussion and possible action, setting the calendar for the 2020 regular budget or regular board meetings. Superintendent Reichman.
Yes, you have on board docs a one-pager that gives you proposed dates for 2020. Take a look at that and see if that works for you.
I have a few comments.
Mr. Nigro?
I'm wondering if we can move the July 16th meeting and the March 12th meeting, and potentially the January 16th meeting, but I definitely need the July and March meetings moved. For me, anyway. I don't know what others are, but.
Mrs. Gordon, I agree with the March date to be moved.
I'm hearing no objections to the other dates. My calendar doesn't go that far out, so.
Mine does, unfortunately.
Mine does too. I have an issue with the November 12th as well.
So, do we need to discuss just moving those a week after? Does that work for everyone? So, well, the January 16th would be January 23rd. March 12th would be March 19th. And July 16th would become July 23rd. And November 12th would become November 19th.
Go ahead.
The only other comment I would have is to make sure that, because the seat that I am in is an ACDHH representative, that it doesn't conflict with their board meetings. And I don't have that schedule at this point.
Okay.
So tentatively, yes.
I mean, if it does, I suppose we could change them in January, but.
So from a tentative standpoint. Right.
Yeah, right. You gotta go to the January meeting. Does the administration have any comments on this? I know in the spring, I think that gives us plenty of time in the spring for the contract renewals, et cetera.
Yes, I mean, the schedule that I proposed to you actually fit my schedule the best. So.
Okay.
I didn't get to vote. I don't remember.
Yes, so, I mean, I'm the one who looks at the calendar and puts it down, so just so you know that.
Okay.
The March board meeting is a critical one that discusses contracts. There will be some changes that I plan to present to you in the January board meeting in executive session, similar to what I did this year. It's going to happen in 2020. So the earlier in March, the better for us with the contract piece of it. And that's why I put it in so early in March. But we could do it a week later.
It would March 5th. I mean, March 5th is the week before. Is that? I'm not sure if that's available for people.
confidence in another.
When is spring break? This is Shelley. When is spring break that year? We don't know when that yet.
Tucson, 16th to the 20th.
So
So the PDSD, 9th through the 13th.
So the 5th would
The
work.
5th would work.
So maybe
then.
that first week, the 5th then?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be the 5th.
I don't get spring break.
No.
So it doesn't matter.
Yep, but I would assume that some of the staff that you have reporting out to us do.
Okay, so we have specific dates, and this is a potential motion to approve this. Leticia, if we could, and this might be showing a little bit of laziness on my part, once you get these identified, are you able to send this out on an Outlook calendar invite to the board? That'd be great.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
So do we need a motion to approve them as
As amended.
amended?
As amended?
Yes.
And can you restate the revised calendar date?
Sure, so
David can.
I can. So we'll be pushing the January meeting, let me click over here. January meeting will be 1 week later, so January 23rd. March 5th. July 23rd.
What about May?
May, I think we're all okay with.
Okay.
Which is what?
And September we're going to keep, right? And then November we're going to move to the 19th, correct? And the location, does anyone have any issues with the location?
No.
The Tucson, Phoenix, I think that's been keeping up with our pattern, so.
Yep. All right, I have a motion,
I second that motion.
and I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.08, discussion of possible action item, election of 2020 board officers. Superintendent Reichman.
I don't think that's my agenda item.
That's
That's
not.
your agenda item.
So I'm trying to divert over to you.
Nice try.
Entertaining any motions for board officers?
Can I just put out there that my term ends as of January when my commission with my board commission with ACBHH ends. I have put in my application for a vacancy, but I have not heard either way, so I would assume that we would also need to re-elect in this position as well. Want to make sure people know that.
That said, do we have any indication on timeline on that, or we haven't heard anything back?
I have a question. This is Linda Bove.
Right.
Just to clarify, do you mean, Suke, to vote for your position? Is that what would happen if we hear nothing back, or?
So as of today's date, I don't know that I will be appointed into another seat on the board. So the secretary position would need to be filled.
Understood.
I do have a nomination, though.
Okay.
I would like to nominate David Nigro for board president.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All's in-
Well, don't you need to see if there's anybody, if A, he will accept it, and B, if there are any other nominations?
Yeah.
Yes, I motion for him to discuss that.
Okay.
Discussion.
I would accept the nomination.
Are there additional motions? Hearing none.
Could I also nominate to have David Nigro as the sole nominee and to be the only one to accept it.
I don't think that's necessary, but I understand where you're coming from. So I have a motion, and I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries. We still need to fill the secretary spot. I will make a motion to continue with Sue Kay as secretary. I don't know what the implications are, but that's my motion.
And if reappointed,
I
I am
second.
willing to continue in that, but you would need to have, I would think, it would need to be addressed if I was not reappointed to my,
Right, I think we'd have an election in January if you weren't reappointed for some reason.
Discussion, additional discussion?
So do we need to nominate Suke to continue? I would
I
nominate
believe so.
Suke to continue as secretary at her, as long as she can.
I have a motion, I have a second. I think that was a second. All those unless there's additional nomination? I have a motion, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 7.09. Ombudsman report. Which ombudsman? Item 8.01, call to the public on non-agendized items. I have two speakers. One is Dr. Rex will read an email submission regarding Patricia Bitsley,
Yes.
Humboldt Unified.
Humboldt Unified Special Ed Director Patricia Bitsilli asked me to share this with the board. Kristen, I wanted to share information with you and the board on how our partnership has been going in Humboldt Unified with NCRC. Positives. There's been a change in the response time since Dale DeVries moved into the position. The ability to collaborate and problem solve has improved. I believe we have seen growth in many of our students who joined this partnership. Of those who joined the partnership and saw growth in their child, 2 families have made the decision to send their children to the Tucson campus and are very happy with the results. Positive, helpful to have ASDB staff on campuses more often. It's mostly improved the working relationship among staff. And final positive is ASDB staff were willing to step up and support when Coyote Springs had a large jump in enrollment that impacted the students with ASDB services at the beginning of the year, which showed true collaboration. Room to grow. The lack of adequate staff from ASDB has negatively impacted some students and staff at HUSD. Communication can be a struggle at times with ASDB service providers and HUSD staff, but we are working on this. And there seems to be some discrepancy between ASDB practice and what the team believes may be needed to make adequate progress. Overall, the program has been successful, and I continue to look forward to partnering with ASDB. Patricia Bitsilli, Director of Special Services, Humboldt Unified.
Thank you. Next person to speak, Danny Lawrence. Welcome, Danny. I think you know on the time limit, so
I do.
thank you.
2 quick comments before I start. Thank you for Braille curriculum. I appreciate that. I wish my son had been able to take advantage of that opportunity here. And thank you for the auditory descriptions in your video tonight. It actually kind of made me teary-eyed to see that. That's the first time I've seen that here. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, President Howard. My name is Danny Lawrence. I speak on behalf of the 251 members of Change ASDB. Tonight is our anniversary. Happy anniversary. It's been a year now that I've been making the drive to wherever you are from Flagstaff to make public comments to try to bring needed change to this organization. And what an incredible year it's been. We've sat in the governor's tower together. We've sat in meetings with the state legislator together. And every ask those individuals have made of this organization has been ignored. This year, my husband and I have provided more than adequate evidence of the lack of equitable service delivery in regional cooperatives, the lack of services ASDB provides period to visually impaired people versus hearing impaired community, We've examined the dismal AZ merit outcomes of this organization, and this year I've also watched as ASDB diminished teacher morale, while a teacher fought hard to bring some needed awareness to the spoken language services of this organization by filing grievances that were dismissed. That teacher has been stripped of her caseload and is assigned to Siberia for doing so. In the past few months, I've watched this board spend more time discussing who will facilitate a strategic planning session than I've seen spent discussing the disturbing financial picture of the organization or the detrimental outcomes of the students educated here. If ASDB ever gets to that planning session, might I suggest that we start looking outside of ourselves? The Utah State Schools for the Deaf and Blind has outcomes 60% higher than ASDB. They do it with $20 million less, and they have an equivalent student body population. Or look to New Mexico or Colorado, but please look outside. Albert Einstein said we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking used to create them, and I think if this board did an honest assessment of this past year, it would be safe to argue that that's what we've done here. No outside facilitation's been brought in, no consultation to learn from other organizations. Nothing more than diving into the same pool, looking for answers for the same people who don't seem to have them. So one would think, given this analysis, that all of this would be really demotivating for me as a mother. It's not. I find it ridiculously empowering, and I look forward to what the next year brings in terms of public awareness. I heard through the grapevine and saw in an open records request that the administration here didn't want to help my son because they didn't want me to win. Please understand, I leave here tonight knowing that I won the lottery when I got my son away from ASDB last fall. We won big time. In the 10 months away, he has learned 187 Braille contractions with a provider who cares for him and gives him the mentorship that only a visually impaired individual could give. I'm here tonight to help other families win too, and I look forward to where the coming year takes us. Thank you. Happy anniversary. I look forward to seeing you in January.
Thank you, Danny. Item 8.02, discussion action item, agenda items for the next regular board meeting. Silence is obvious.
This is Mike Manley. Could we just get an update on the virtual service delivery and how that's going?
Yes, we can do that.
Any additional items? This says an action item, but I don't know if this is an action item. I don't think we need to vote on whether or not that goes before the next agenda item. Am I mistaken? That said, we will go to another action item, which is 9.01. Adjournment. Do we have a motion?
I motion to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
That's her job. Motion.
Oh, yeah, that's true.